Hello everybody, my name is Boulevard and welcome to the Fates Voyage Onward recap. Just want to take a little stroll down memory lane with all of you and talk about the Fates Voyage Onward expansion, the Opens, the Worlds Qualifier, the Last Chance Qualifier, who qualified for Worlds out of this season, all that cool stuff. Not going to talk about the year as a whole and 64 players qualified for Worlds. That is a video for another day. But to kick things off, obviously we have to release the expansion and then we have our first Runeterra Open where the big question was Warden of the Tribes. It had done very well, very well, in fact, in the Heart of the Huntress Eternal Open, but folks were curious how it was going to work out in Standard, and the answer was as well as we expected. All we had to do was change from Shadow Isle to Demacia, and this was a trend that would kind of continue on over the rest of the year. Everything's better if you just put Demacia in it, or imitate Demacia, like Jax Orn. Taking over for Aatrox Vayne as the new mid-range boogeyman. In fact, this is more or less the last that we will see of Aatrox Vayne for the remainder of the year. Then Nyla Janna, sort of the new cool deck, came in at number 3, and to round things out in our top 5, we actually had 2 more aggressive decks in Elusives and Wildfire. I think this was really cool. Now, as far as the Open itself, in the Americas, it was the inaugural win for AJ the Pro. In EMEA, it was a win for Boxer, and Saruman was the winner of the APAC Fates Voyage Runeterra Open. Then we move along into patch 410, and you might be thinking, how are we going to fix this Warden problem, this Jax Orn problem? The answer, apparently, was to just throw a bunch of shit out. First, we removed Jaceheimer from the game. Then, we removed Samira from the game. Then, we tried to remove Lurk from the game, but for some reason, this is the deck that everyone still clings to. Then, we removed Warden from the game, and for good measure, we removed Wildfire from the game. Then we removed Alawi from the game, because we're thinking real deep on this one and getting rid of everything. And then they tried to remove Jax Orn from the game, but they gave it a compensation buff with Omenhawk, so it didn't end up mattering. Then, obviously, we have to stay in Standard and test out this new balance patch in a new event for our final Worlds qualifier. This time, Nyla Janna really rises to the top with a bunch of sort of mid-range decks in tow, Formidable and Scout's Champion Strength still just showing its absolute dominance in the Standard meta, followed by Elusives and then Seraphine Ionia. As you can see, some bigger mid-range decks like Jax Orn fell down outside of the top 5, and Aatrox Vayne has more or less been removed from the game. Now, as far as the winners of this was a really interesting one, and I'm not misspeaking here. The winner of the Fates Voyage Worlds Qualifier for the Americas was once again AJ the Pro. And just like AJ over in EMEA, Boxer decides to win 2 events in a row, not to be shown up. Now, you might be wondering who won the APAC Open. That's right, no, it's not Saruman, unfortunately. That would have been so cool. Instead, though, it was FNPJ01, a player that a lot of people were waiting to get a win for years and years, finally does get a win at the Worlds Qualifier. All those players moving on to the World Championship. Then, patch 411. This was our variety patch, so we get some new cards. This one, not as much of a hit as some of the previous variety patches. In fact, when we look at what comes into the competitive meta, Chemtech Drake was a very funny card for the first couple of days with a weird nab interaction, but for the most part, people are looking at Enraged Firespitter and Bowdeer of the Blackened Ice, maybe some Veiled Protector. That's really all that kind of came out of this. And then one of the big things is like Divine Whirlwind is a lot less burn, so people are a lot less inclined to try Janna Nyla because it was a very precise deck. Cosmic Call getting taken out back and just losing its ability to actually invoke when you go for the giant Cosmic Call had implications across both Standard and Eternal. Janna, Champion Strength, just a lot of the problem cards getting nerfed. Really not that many nerfs, at least for Standard. And then War Mother's Call getting buffed again. This is probably one of the most impactful buffs from this set. But don't want to talk too much about the patch. Just want to get straight into the Eternal Open and how that meta shook out. And guess what? It was Jax Orn again. Even in Eternal, it's Jax Orn. The deck has just taken over everywhere. It ran a couple of Eternal cards, but for the most part, still just a standard list. And then the Targon Victor value piles that have been ever present in Eternal once again rose to the top. Voltron, I'm going to probably end up changing the name of this in the spreadsheet because a lot of people are confused by it, but this was the Enraged Firespitter deck. It was a Draven. It was like Draven and Vi on ladder, and then as we got into the actual event, it changed to Rumble. Then Nasus made a big comeback, and Seraphine Piles made a really big comeback. So nothing too crazy. As you can see, the representation, the numbers are very low. It was an extremely wide meta. And the winners of this were, for the Americas, Aikido, for EMEA, Kuvira, and for APAC Aurora. So one of the big takeaways from the main season, not the LCQ, but the Fates Voyage Onward Opens and World Championship qualifiers, is that a lot of longtime community favorites like, JO1, Kuvira, Aikido, all got their first win, and that was just absolutely great to see. And then Aurora just, kind of picking up another win for APAC, trying to make sure that they get back in there. And then we go ahead and move on to the last chance qualifier, which was a week after the Eternal Open. And obviously we switch back to standard. So again, going to be a very wide meta. And again, Jack Sorin going to be number one. Not great, I think, to see the same deck at number one in Eternal and Standard, but hey, it's going to happen sometimes. Jack Sorin was it. Then we can see Karma Sept took the number 2 spot, followed by Bandle City Jinx, Red Gwen 2.0, and Nora Heimerdinger. So a nice little mix of mid-range control decks and some more aggressive options. Red Gwen 2.0 now being Gwen and Riven, and again, just an enraged Fire Spitter deck. Bodir the Black and Ice comes in War Mothers, but is just outside of the top 5. So again, the variety patch, a little light, Jack Sorin, a little dominant, but that, hey, what can you do? That was the season and the LCQ winners. Well, we're going to name all the finalists, rather. So in the Americas, we had Hawk362 and Kid with the Pig, both getting to the finals and moving on. In the EMEA shard, it was RE Monty and Af Never Walk Alone. And finally, in APAC, it was NTNN3 and Fiery Cloud. So all those players will be here at the World Championship, as well as the point leaders for the Fates Voyage Onward. Again, AJ winning 2 of those events means they are not in the running, so it will be JoJo, Matri, and 4LW that move on to the World Championship down in EMEA. A lot of players already qualified again, so I believe it was Shaker, PVH, and Kuvira, and then Barcode got in on yearly points. This sounds right, Shaker, PVH, Kuvira. So all 3 of them will be at the World Championship. And then for APAC, I believe it was JO1, Zetav, and Belcoot? Or maybe Aurora? I think it was Belcoot. I think Aurora was already qualified. Anyway, it's 3 players from up here, and Reroll was already qualified. So that's kind of what we've got from there. And then there was actually a tiebreaker match that had to be played in APAC, which was a little awkward to watch the finals of, as it came down to Kuro needing to 2-0 Koa in order to actually advance, otherwise Koa would move on. So as soon as we got to Game 3, that it was locked that Koa would be moving on to the World Championship. But that is what happened during the Fates Voyage Onward expansion. And now we are going on to Fates Voyage Beyond, I believe is the name of the new set, with the World Championship. And I'm not sure if Fates Voyage Beyond is going to have its own season past the World Championship. We don't really know what competitive is going to look like next year, but assuming that there is a season for that, I will be here with you again in a couple of months to recap it, remind you how it all happened, and hopefully not talk about how Jack Sorin is the number 1 deck. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will have more Worlds content for you coming soon. But for now, it's just nice to say goodbye to Fates Voyage Onward, and I will see you next time.